I still feel 25 most of the time. Left Alabama and girl, go side door. Left Alabama, weave the ring. All right, here we go. Another Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight I'm going north of the border again. North of the border for me, that would be. Tonight I'm going back to Canada. I have a gentleman by the name of Bryan Clark. Mr. Clark, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Charlie.
Nice to meet you. Finally, we realized earlier that we had actually run across each other in Evansville a while back, but didn't know. We may have didn't know you at the time. Of course, you call it a higher level, and we'll talk about that. So maybe I didn't.
Did you watch the competition?
I did not watch the competition. Not while I was there.
Yeah, no, I was dancing in the same square with Ted. I was actually dancing with Shauna Carey.
Shauna Carey, okay, another person that I just love talking to and getting to meet her, and a lot of her records, by the way. So, Bryan, where are you in Canada?
I am in a town that's right adjacent to Vancouver. It's called Burnaby, okay. And yeah, we're just right next door. And I work for the city of Vancouver, so I'm in Vancouver pretty much all the time.
Okay.
Now although technically I work from home.
Are you Canadian? You're born in Canada and everything?
Yep, born and raised, and been here forever.
Very nice. Okay. I have a good bit of family. My mother's family's from Newfoundland, Canada. I've been up there twice, and but I was very young, so I have zero memories other than I actually went, and then it was cold. So at some point, I hope to get back there. Who knows? So you're in Canada, obviously a square dance caller. That's what gets us here tonight. When did you start dancing?
I started dancing in 1980.
1980, okay.
Yep, my parents had learned how to square dance. And they had found out from the club that they were dancing at that here in Burnaby, there was a teen square dance club where they could send their teenager to go learn how to dance. And at the time I was 9. Okay. And they decided to put me in the square dance club. And the nice part was at the time, the club had around 10 squares of dancers. And it was so much fun. We had so many kids dancing there, and it was full. And you know, and we basically learned how to dance to compete. So we weren't actually dancing for recreation. We were dancing to be competitive square dancers. And so the training for competitive square dancing is quite a bit different than training for recreational square dancing. So I basically grew up in an entirely different world. The one thing we did was we did every year, we would take our whole square out, we'd go practice, and we'd go dance at other clubs. And it was kind of a novelty for the clubs to see us come and dance to them. But it was, I don't know, it was just experience. But the fun part was there was nothing that the local callers could do that could break our squares down. Like, we were that much better dancers. Sure. Because we were, you know, we understood, you know, how the calls were broken down and all of the pieces of each individual call, and essentially how to do them upside down and backwards. So that was how we were trained from square one. And, you know, back then the caller for our club was Ray Brenzy, he's on the board of governors of Caller Lab right now, I believe. So yeah, he had taught me how to dance years ago. And so yeah, that's where I got started.
Okay. Yeah, I've noticed, and I've danced for a really long time. I've been calling for a portion of that. But yeah, you see it now, especially after COVID. People go through classes and all that, and it's a very bland form that they get, because I can go into most clubs, and if you call a left square through, you'll break some squares down, just because it's not normal to do a left square through. Right. And you get into left touch a quarter, and all of a sudden everybody's just out of it, because it's such a difference. As a team, you're learning it. You can dance from both positions. You can dance at all. It's important that you know all the locations of where you're supposed to be, where you're going, and you have to be able to do it from both sides and do it left-handed. Right. So unfortunately, some of that's gone away. If you go to a club, if it's not your club, and the club that I have, I try and put in left-handed and half sashayed calls, just so they get used to it and they can see it. Do they do it at other places? Not normally, but that's awesome, man. So you're dancing, and so we were talking earlier. The competitive dancing still carries on out that way. You still have
Uh,
competitive dancing.
Correct. It's certainly not what it was when I started, because when I started, the first competition that I was in was in 1981, I believe, and that one we had about 1,200 competitors. So we started at 7 in the morning and we finished at about 1 o'clock in the morning the next day. Because we basically go through the entire day. We dance what's called display dances in the morning, which is basically three singing calls across the floor. We dance three positions across the floor. The middle position is called your display position. So you are actually called to by your caller, and it's a singing call that you've practiced. And so it's something that you're supposed to make look as perfect as possible. So you're basically stepping, on the same foot as all the other dancers. Like all the boys that are on the same foot and all the girls are on the same foot. Your arms are at the right height when you're doing your twirls and whatever, and everything is perfectly done, and that's what the display is about. But the other two positions are the display positions for the other people. So when you're in position number one, some other square is dancing their display, and you have no idea what that singing call is, so you have to do it. You have to make it look as good as you can, but you may not know what the choreography is, and you may not know what the singing call is. So it'll be the first time, maybe the first time you've heard it. Who knows? And a lot of times, the other clubs, and including our club, are the whoever did the singing call, they would find a singing call with a really tough figure, so that they might break down your square so that you may not do so well. But that was how they did it in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we did what's known as mysteries. And mysteries are comprised of anywhere from about 6 to 10 minutes of patter, which is done by some caller that's been asked to essentially kill us. They put out choreography that's designed to destroy us and see how well we do. And it's horribly fun. If you're watching the kids dancing, they look like a bunch of little challenge dancers dancing mainstream plus. That's how much fun it is. Unfortunately, just like challenge dancers, none of us are smiling because we're too busy concentrating on making sure we dance all the calls correctly. Which sort of led me into dancing advanced and challenge, because that's kind of where my mind is.
Okay.
But as a teen dancer, we only danced mainstream plus. So that was how fun it was we were just dancing mainstream plus, and we were dancing it at what I referred to as the Olympic level.
Sure. Feels like it.
So yeah, it was totally fun. Like we were the one of the years we did it, I think Steve Nosek from Seattle was the mystery caller, and he had called the um uh the 9 consecutive slide throughs,
Yeah,
and
I heard that
and
one.
our square was the only square on the floor that got it. And he was up in the crowd, and he stood up and he started clapping, and the chief judge told him to sit down and shut up because we had to finish the dance. Yeah, it was so much fun. And the competition is held sometimes in British Columbia, other times it's held in Seattle. Sometimes we've even gone down to what is it, down to Oregon and danced
Okay.
it in Oregon. We A few years ago, we also went up to Penticton and did it up in Penticton, Canada.
Okay.
So yeah, it's been all over the place.
So now
Um,
you're calling for it now, correct? Is that what you do? What do you do with it?
so I competed in the competition from 1980 through 1990. So basically 10 years of competing, and then I aged out. So as soon as you were over 19 years old, you could no longer compete because it was a teen square dance competition. I think now they let the kids compete up to age 24, just because they don't have enough kids. So they let some of the older kids join in, just to complete a square. But yeah, back in my day, as soon as you were over 19, you couldn't compete anymore. So then the rules said that if you're out of the competition for at least 2 years, you can then come back and judge.
Okay.
And so I had the option. Either I could go and I could help train the kids, or I could judge. And I just felt that judging was a lot more fun for me. And so I started doing the judging. And when you're a judge, you judge dancing. So you judge the singing calls in the morning. You judge patter calling for callers, because we're also judging callers as well. We judge the singing calls for the callers. And then the more experienced callers do what's called third and fourth round. So they do an extra patter call and an extra singing call in the afternoon. And so those are the senior callers. So they end up doing a little more than just the newer callers. So how much calling you do depends on how much experience you have. So if you're younger, if you're novice, you do one singing call. If you're an intermediate caller, you're doing a patter call and a singing call. If you're a senior, you do two patters and two singing calls.
Okay.
So, and then also at the same competition, they also have round dancing, which I was totally surprised about. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I say
you
that,
round
but
dance?
I do. I've competed in round dancing.
Okay. Okay.
And I've done okay. I was never first place. I think I came in second place when I competed. But it's, it is what it is. But as a caller, I prefer not round dancing, because that's when I get to take a break.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Well, when did so you started around 9 years old?
Yep.
With lessons in the competitive dancing. When did you decide you wanted to be a caller, or you wanted to try it out?
So when I was around 12, the club callers and the club executive sort of realized that I was out on the floor singing the calls while I was dancing.
Gotcha.
And they tried to get me to call, and I was too I'll just say chicken, and I wanted to add the other word to it, but I'll just say
I got you.
I was just too chicken to grab a microphone and get up and call. And it wasn't until about 1987, when I was like 16 or 17 years old, that a friend of mine, Chris Knowles, who was also a caller at the club, he decided that we were going to get up and do a singing call together. And so we got up and did a duet. And that was the first time I called. And then from that point on, it was like, oh, okay, that's fine. But what had happened was when I was 17, I was in high school, and I took a drama class. And it was the drama class that taught me that it wasn't a big deal to grab a microphone.
Be out in front of somebody. Do you remember what the singing call at the duet was?
No, I have no idea. I can't remember.
What do you think? So you do a duet with him. I know Mr. Brenzy actually taught you to dance. Who do you consider some of your mentors, or people who worked with you on the calling aspect when you were starting out?
So I took a calling, I guess it was a caller school that was done by the local Callers Association. And there were 3 callers that were there who taught it. A caller by the name of Al Mertz, another one by the name of Jim McPherson, and Earl Bowles. And they were all just local callers. And they did, I'll say, a reasonable caller school. But I think the thing that I enjoyed out of that school the most was the caller critique sessions, where one caller would get up and call, and then the group of everybody in the room would do an honest critique on what they heard. And to me, that was the best thing that you got out of the caller school. Some of the things they were teaching, I didn't necessarily agree with or like. Like they were teaching us friends and enemies method of sight calling. And I just never really cared for it that much. I just found it was too much process and couldn't wrap my head around it. So I said, forget that. But the problem was, as a teen square dancer, and when I was 12, I was already anticipating the caller's get outs before he was getting there. And so I kind of knew how to sight call before I was a caller. And so I didn't really get my proper theory on calling until I started working with Dave Stevens out of California. Dave Stevens, he ended up moving to Seattle, and he started doing advanced dances on Friday nights in Vancouver. And he would come up to Vancouver, do the Friday night dances. And then after the dance, he and I would go to one of our local 24-hour restaurants, kind of like a Denny's. And we would sit there for 5 hours, and with creamers out on the table, we'd be talking choreography. It
Okay.
was so much
That's
fun,
great.
and I learned so much. And a lot of the things that I knew how to figure out in my head, I ended up getting theory for. I
Okay.
learned what those things were called. And so I found out that what I do when I do singing calls, I do isolated sight. Never knew that before.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it was a pretty good school. And then Dave had taught me that the best way for me to learn how to call and become a well-rounded caller was not to take all of his advice, but to become friends with a guy in Seattle by the name of Raleigh Weand. Raleigh was a tape leader in Seattle. He actually taught a bunch of dancers in Seattle how to dance via tape. And then it turned out he ended up calling himself because he was too sick and tired of just playing tapes. So he learned choreography and he learned sight resolution and he started writing material and he ended up calling for his dancers. But what he did was he hosted callers, national callers, to come into Seattle every month. And so once a month, somebody would come in, somebody like Lee Kottman, Steve Kottman, uh, Bill Harrison, Bob Fisk, you name it. If they were popular, they would come in. Ed Foote. There were just a bunch of callers would come in. Dave Lightly, Dave Wilson. And so functionally, I had a caller school once a month
Yeah.
at Rob's house.
So it sounds like it's awesome.
I'd go to his place and we'd go to the dance. And then when the dance was over, we'd go back to his place and we'd sit and talk choreography all night long. And so I got to learn from the best.
It
Uh,
certainly sounds like wow.
so yeah, so it's been a really fun education for me. And so yes, I know a lot of the national college just from that experience. And so, I got to know everybody. Um, and so yeah, so that's where I got most of my caller knowledge and caller training is from those experiences. Because back then they didn't have a lot of caller schools. There
Sure.
wasn't an organized uh, or there were some, but most of them were down in the States and they cost a lot of money. It was difficult to travel to, and they were also 4 or 5 day long. So it's difficult to go to something like that.
It still is now. One of my favorite ones, Ken Ratusi. He has several caller schools throughout the year, but the one he does in the Northeast, up there where he's from, I went there once. It's phenomenal, but it's costly. I have to fly there, and then I have to get a rental car because
Mhm.
it's not close to the airport. So yeah, I can't imagine trying to do it all from Canada. Just the cost involved. Um, Now, have you done a lot of traveling with your calling, or what do you do with it? Just local?
So I was introduced back in 2000. I ended up calling a weekend in Germany.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
I,
Tell
I
me
got
about
an
that.
I got an invite from a friend of mine, Dave Wilson, who well, basically all of my favorite callers are named Dave. There's Dave Wilson, Dave Lightly, Dave Hodson. Uh,
Okay.
they're fabulous callers. And but Dave Wilson was amazing. He's the kind of caller, and I heard this story from Ann Ubelacker where he was up on stage calling, I think it was like C3B, and Ann was calling after him, and he got up or she got up to call after him, and she's setting up her stuff on the stage, and she realizes that he's calling to the dancers, and he's got a pile of papers in front of him. They're all blank, and he's just flipping the paper over. And she asked him afterwards. She said, "What the hell are you doing?" He goes, "Well," he goes, "they want me to read, so I'm reading." And because he would sight call all of his material all the way up through C3B.
Jeez.
And so that particular story I thought was hilarious because yeah, a lot of the challenged dancers do expect you to put some work into your material.
Mhm.
And his feeling was that if they can't dance to sight called material, why would he put any work into writing material? Um, and that's I kind of have that attitude myself. Um, but and again, the where I come from, we dance competitively, so I have a lot of creative things that come off the top of my head all the time. If I write something, usually anytime I write something, it's too difficult to dance anyways, so it's really not worth writing. It ends up being too difficult. Like the only time I write stuff is if I'm writing stuff for the teen competition. If they've asked me to do one of the mysteries. Um, but other than that, yeah, I tend not to write. So anyways, for the weekend in Germany, because I knew Dave from Raleigh's house, Dave figured, oh, well, I think, we're doing an advanced teach in Germany. It's an A1, A2 teach over 5 days in Germany. He knows that I know the material. He knows that I can call it, but I'd never called in Germany before. And he figured it would be great to have me come do the weekend. And I had no idea what to expect. And the other thing he taught me was making sure that I charge the same as the other callers and that I don't try to undercut people. And it worked out pretty well. And so I got paid very well for the weekend. But it was a wonderful experience because I had no idea what to expect. So Stefan Moring, who was the one who hired me for the weekend, he took us out to a dance prior to the weekend. There's a caller from Denmark. Her name is Lona Bloom, and she is amazing. We went to a mainstream plus dance, and what they did was they alternated tips. And while I was watching, I couldn't believe how well they were dancing. She was calling what I considered to be all position dancing by definition material at full speed, and the dancers were dancing everything. And I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, wow, these people can dance. Well, yeah, they can. It's because they set up their programs correctly. I think Steve mentioned that to you last week. Yeah, when they do their teaching of their programs, they specifically say, okay, well, this is basic, and you're going to learn basic. And the other thing I learned, and Steve didn't mention this to you, but they came up with a passport program for the dancers. And what they have to do is when they go to a dance, they have to get their passport signed by the caller of the dance.
Okay.
They can only have their club caller sign a quarter of the book. 3/4 of the book has to be signed by other callers. So that forces them to get floor time. It forces them to dance the level they've just learned, and they have to dance it and fill the passport. And you can only go to the next level if you have a full passport.
Oh, nice.
So to me, that's a wonderful way to force the dancers to get the floor time they need to be good dancers, and that's what they do in Germany, which is amazing. So yeah, they're amazing dancers there. And so I thought, oh, this is going to be such an easy teach. Well, the unfortunate thing, not everybody in the room speaks English.
Yeah.
However, they did, they all read the definitions before they came to the lessons, which was another thing I had never seen before. So it was so easy because all I had to do was explain how to dance the calls using the other calls they already knew how to do. And it was my first experience there, and it went very well. Well enough indeed that Stefan had invited me to call on the IPAC 2003 program, which it's the International Plus Advanced and Challenge Convention that he had. And he was the host of that convention for many years. And now it's being hosted by I think the European Dancers Association is hosting it now. But back then it was Stefan Moring who did all of it. And I did 2003 and I did 2005. And it was so much fun. So those are big conventions. And so from 2000 to about 2016 or so, I think I went to Europe about 32 times.
Wow, very nice.
Yeah.
I've always heard that the overseas, Germany, Japan, places like that, the dancing is the level is just nothing. I mean, it's so much higher just on the basic mainstream and plus level, because they can dance from all the positions as to some of the local places. But that's really, people dance to what they get here called. So you can't fault dancers when callers are only calling certain things.
Yes.
And if there's a lack of creativity, for lack of a better term, you can't expect the dancers to get any better if they hear the same stuff every weekend. And like you were saying, that's the first I'd heard of the passports. I tell all the people that even if somebody hires me for a dance for a Friday night, at some point I will get up there when I'm doing my little talk in between tips, and I'll say, you really you got a great club caller, whoever it may be, but you need to get out and dance to other people. You've got to
Mhm.
hear, and I'll use example. You got to hear Mike Smith say square through four as opposed to me saying square through four, because it's going to be different, and it's gonna sound different. It's going to feel different. So that's impressive that they have them go through the passport setup for that, because it's better for the dancers and the callers too. It pushes the callers. You got to be better. If you keep throwing the same generic stuff out there, you're going to lose people. So, all right, we're back. We had a little bit of a internet issue, and so we're right back at it. When we were talking earlier, Bryan, we were talking about passports and how your dancers in your area move up from level to level, and I was talking about the dancers and the creativity and things like that.
Well, that's the dancers over in Europe.
Is that Europe? Okay.
Here in this area, it's pretty much the same as it probably is in your area, where the each individual caller does their own thing. And in our case, there was, I guess, our local association. There was a lot of jealousy and hatred, so they didn't like it when other dancers would go dance with other clubs, and it wasn't really a thing where they were promoting it. They were okay with once in a blue moon their dancers going off and doing a stealing the banner of another club,
Yeah.
but that would mean that their dancers would have to come back to their club to get their banner back. So that was kind of the deal. Your dancers would go somewhere, and then they would bring a bunch of dancers back a few weeks later. So
We
it
used to
was.
have a lot of that, a lot of the banner stuff, banner raids and things. You just don't see it anymore, unfortunately.
Mhm. Yeah, there used to be a lot of interesting, fun kind of things, but also back then we had a lot more dancers.
Yeah.
Because the club that my parents danced at, every Thursday night they had about 20 squares of dancers,
Jeez.
and that was their regular night of dancing. And then now that particular club, they have 3 squares of dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Jeez.
Now the caller that they used to have, he's long since retired, but back then when my parents were dancing, yeah, they had 20 squares of dancers at the club, and it was great.
Wow. That is impressive.
Mhm.
Well, more on you, man. Because I know when we're going to talk about karaoke in a minute, if you're not listening to square dance music, what's your genre that you like the most, or do you have a favorite?
I tend to listen to top 40 radio.
Okay.
I like to listen to a lot of what's sort of current, so that I can pick out new powder records and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Um, because since we've been forced to pay for actual music licensing, it
Mhm.
essentially gives us the ability to use any music we want now.
Mhm.
Back in the day, it made sense for us to use square dance music because that was what was readily available for us, and it was designed for our activity. And when I went over to Europe, I found a lot of the callers using more pop music because the dancers were younger.
Yeah.
I thought it was hilarious. I remember I was working with Bronk Wise, and he brought out Venga Boys, and it just surprised me. I'm like, what are you doing with Venga Boys at a square dance? And the dancers were loving it. And so it was amazing. And so from then on, anytime I listen to the radio, I tend to listen to the top 40 stuff and see what's out there. So,
Nice. There's a couple of
but
record labels that put it out pretty good now too with that stuff.
oh yeah, certainly. Yes. But I also listen to a lot of old music. Like I'm a pretty big Michael Bublé fan. I love the Rat Pack, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, that whole era.
Right.
Um, Bobby Darin. Yeah, when I was doing some of the karaoke stuff, I was doing some of those songs. So yeah, it was
Tell me
fun.
about the karaoke. I saw some of it on Facebook. What do you do with the karaoke?
So technically, I retired from calling about 5 years ago.
Okay.
My son moved in with me full time, and I couldn't really go out and do a whole night of square dancing, or do what I was doing, which was I would be gone for about 5 days because I'd be going off to Europe and doing a 5 day thing. But as soon as my son moved in full time, I couldn't do that anymore. So I retired, and in retiring, I had to figure out something to do to sort of keep my voice active.
Mhm.
And so going to the local bar for a couple hours and singing some karaoke was a way to do that. Um, so yeah, it was nice. The fun part is I don't drink, so going to the bar doesn't make a lot of sense. However, that's where they do it, and you can do it there for free pretty much, other than having to buy a drink. But since I'm just buying Diet Coke, I just buy one Diet Coke, and they
Yeah,
refill it all night long.
nice. Very
So
nice.
so it's pretty cheap for me to go to the karaoke bar.
Some of your favorite karaoke, what's some of your songs to do that you like to do the most?
So the go-to songs, Ain't That a Kick in the Head by Dean Martin.
Mhm.
I'll do Such a Night by Michael Bublé, which is it's a remake of an old Elvis song. Um, Pretty much anything by Michael Bublé. I've got pretty much all of his songs, and I can do the entire catalog. I think I have a list of around 300 songs that I do now. So
Okay, very good, very good.
yeah, yeah. So it's pretty fun. It's a little different.
When we were talking earlier too, you had mentioned cruises. You have any cruises coming up? Have you played cruises yourself, actually being the caller?
So years ago, I was invited to be on one of those big square dance cruises, and what it relied on was getting enough of your dancers to buy tickets and go,
Sure.
because you had to have, I think at the time, you had to have at least 10 couples go on the cruise in order for you to have your cruise paid for.
Okay.
And unfortunately, none of the dancers here were willing to, pay a couple $1,000s for a cruise.
Sure.
So I didn't go on that. That would have been a fun cruise. I think it was. I think Jerry Story was on the cruise and a few other callers. It was one of those big, kind of the big cruise that you're going on.
Mhm.
But so I never got to go on that cruise. I've never done a square dance cruise, but I've actually gone on about 8 cruises in my life. We did a honeymoon cruise to Bermuda. I've done a bunch of repositioning cruises up and down the coast.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Just recently, I did a cruise with the Fine Tune Boys. We did a cruise out of California, out of Long Beach. We went to Ensenada, and it was a 3-day cruise, and it was so much fun. Basically, just a bunch of guys sitting around chatting,
Mhm.
um, chatting, drinking, eating, and enjoying the entertainment on the boat. And it was, or sorry, ship. And I need to say ship
Yeah.
because
Yes.
it's
Yep.
not a boat; it's a ship. But yeah, it was fun because yeah, over the years I got to have a really good relationship with Rod Shuping and Rick Hampton and Phil Farmer and all these guys who mostly record stuff on Fine Tunes. Whenever they would be at nationals, they would always ask me if I wanted to be on their what is it, trail-in program that they would have,
Mhm.
because they usually do an advanced trail-in, and so they'd ask me to be part of their program. And it's fun because I don't actually do any recordings. I've never had those kind of aspirations.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, it was fun. It was great, and we're actually doing the cruise again this year. And I heard that Wade Driver's going, so it's
Nice. Very nice.
getting a little bigger. So we'll have
Sure.
more. So
I've had a couple of opportunities of course, being in California and everything else, Texas and that area. There's a bunch of callers I don't get to talk to regular. Wade Driver's one of them. I've had a handful of times at conventions. Just a great guy. Love talking to that guy. Being one of the older guys. I mean, everybody's aged up. I mean, even myself. But when you get somebody like Wade Driver, just the stories and the experience that he doesn't even realize he's saying half the time. What an awesome dude. Oh
the
man.
first time I met him was kind of a fun story. I was at the National in Wichita, and I was invited to call at the Plus. Um, it was one of the Plus after parties, and I got into the hall, and they said, "Okay, well, you're up next." And I looked up who was calling, and it was Jerry Story and Marshall Flippo, and they were up on the stage calling, and they were doing this crazy, super high energy song of theirs, and it was amazing. And they had the floor like 3 feet off the ground, and it was great. And I thought, well, I'm not going to compete with that because I do mostly ballads. And so when I thought about it, I looked at my computer and I said, okay, well, what's one of my favorite songs? And one of my favorite songs is Key Largo, and it's on
Nice.
rhythm. And I said, okay, great. I'm gonna get up there and tell them I'm gonna slow it down for them. And that's what I told them. And I was just about to hit play, and I look out on the floor, and right in front of me, not the first square, but the second square out, looking right up at me was Wade Driver and his wife. They were dancing in the square right in front. And I'm like, oh crap. I have to do Wade's song in front of Wade. Oh no. But it was good because at the end of the song, he came up to me afterwards and he said that he thought I did a really good job. So it was
Very
interesting. And again, first time I met him. So that was
wow,
kind of
that's
an
a great
interesting,
story.
auspicious meeting.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's really good, man.
hmm So so yes.
So
So there's been a few times over the years.
very good, very good. With the karaoke and now you still do some calling even though you're retired, but with the karaoke, you were you competing in that? Tell me about the competition. I didn't realize there were competitions.
Yeah, so this past year, the local bar that I was at, uh, I went there one night just to do karaoke, and the karaoke hostess said, "Oh, we're doing the karaoke competition," and I go, "What's that?" She says, "Oh, well, you pay $30 for your entrance fee, and then you do two songs per night, and we have 6 weeks of preliminary competition, and you get judged." And I go, "Oh, okay." So what do I have to do? And she pointed me to some website, and I had to look at the rules and see what was going on. And unfortunately, it didn't feel like karaoke to me, because to me, karaoke is just going to the bar, looking at the
Mhm.
screen, singing the song. Well, this competition, they don't want you looking at the screen. They want you to memorize the song.
Um,
And they want you to entertain the audience. And I'm like, well, that's not karaoke. That's, mostly it's just drunk people singing songs.
yeah.
So, so I was like, oh, okay, so I picked a bunch of songs that I knew I didn't need the words to, and most of them were Buble songs, and they thought that they weren't stretching my vocals too much, and those were kind of the things that they were complaining about. They were also complaining about what I was wearing, and I said, well, this particular night I was just coming out for karaoke. I had it was the middle of summer, so I had shorts and a t-shirt. And they're like, "Oh, this guy doesn't seem very serious about the competition." I go, "I didn't even know about the competition."
Didn't even
So,
know I was walking into a competition.
so yeah, so then 6 weeks in, for the nights that we were doing these songs, um, finally by the end of it, they said to me, they said, "Oh, well, we have a top 13 that are going to the provincial finals." And I was in the top 13, and I ranked number 8 going into the finals. So I'm like, great. So I went to the finals, and then with the finals, which was the provincial finals, it was just at another venue. It wasn't a pub. I think it was a local Army and Navy facility, whatever, Legion or whatever. Went in there, and I ended up fifth place, and that was enough to get me to the Canadian finals. And
Nice.
I went to Calgary and did that. And so while I was in Calgary, um, Joe Ublacker showed up, and he got to watch me sing one of my songs
Oh,
live.
that's awesome.
Yeah, and then we went and had dinner, and then he took off home, and then he watched the rest of them from home. But yeah, it was fun. But it appeared that uh, they sort of had a preconceived notion who was going to win, because everybody who won, or everyone who went or to the national or to the internationals, they were all from Toronto.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so they're probably Blue Jays fans, like on your hat.
Probably, yeah. Yeah.
But it
A
was
lot.
fun.
Well, is if it's something you enjoy doing, and as we were talking, I enjoy karaoke. I don't get out here and do it that much. I'm sure there is some around here. I mean, you can find anything you want in Atlanta for the most part, but I just enjoy doing it, and I see what you get. I mean, I've never competed, and I didn't know of competitions, but it is something you go to have fun at. Some people are competitive and want to do it. I don't think I'd like that. I just like going and having fun with other people, and listening to them, whatever, and doing my own karaoke. So I don't have
Right.
any favorite songs yet. I don't do it enough, but I plan on doing
Well,
it on the boat some, but we'll see.
well, one of the things that I would do as a caller is I would find a singing call that I like, and whether I've listened to it on some kind of a tape service or whether I've gone to a dance and I heard another caller do it, I get the label and I buy the record, and then what I do is I go to YouTube and I find the original song and I look up the original song and figure out how the original song is done. So that not only do I know the words, I know how the song goes, I know all of the intonations and everything else. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll buy the karaoke version and I might even sing it for karaoke. Um, so there's a lot of practice that goes into these songs because one of the processes that we had as teen dancers, as teen callers calling at the festival, we were being judged as callers. So not only are we being judged on how well we're singing the songs and our voices and everything else, but it's the usage of the calls, the timing that we have, and all the other stuff is all part and parcel with what you get as a while you're being judged.
Right.
But the callers who call it the teen festival tend to put a little more into their singing calls than your regular caller. So if you're looking at your regular run-of-the-mill caller and you go, oh yeah, he does a pretty good singing call. Well, you compare it to some of the teen square dance callers. They're putting so much energy into it and so much into the entertainment factor of it to make sure that the judges are giving them higher scores. So my go-to for singing calls for Teen Festival, I would emulate Johnny Preston
Yes.
because
Okay.
Johnny Preston to me is one of the best singing callers out there. And and then on top of that, you look at somebody like Tony Oxendine, but it's difficult to match what Tony does. But at least with Johnny, I found that I could sort of match what Johnny was doing, and so that was fun. And so I would emulate that for years. But I had done that for years. I had seen many different singing callers out there, and emulated what they do. So yeah.
Well, I didn't ask you to think about this, but do you have off the top of your head, do you have a song that you would like to see as a singing call
A song that I would like to see.
that you don't think has been done yet or hasn't been done yet?
Um, hmm, boy. Um, no, actually. Because as I say, I'm not really into doing recordings or being a recording artist or that. So I don't think in those kind of terms. When I hear a song, I get inspired.
Sure.
Shauna put out Because by the Dave Clark Five.
Mhm.
And that's a song I used to sing to my daughter when it was bedtime.
Nice.
And so it's like, oh, I'm going to sing that song. And with that song, it was actually really funny. She took a recording of me doing that song at nationals in somewhere. I can't remember where it was. Anyways, it was at one of the nationals. And at the same nationals, she went and videotaped Tom Miller, who was the one who did the recording. But what Tom did was he made a mistake when he was up there calling. Instead of playing the instrumental version of the song, he played the called version. So he had to do the entire song the way he did it on the called version because you could hear the vocals in the background. And there's a video of it online. You can actually see it. So it's pretty funny. And Shauna recorded that, and that's online. So definitely a fun watch.
I'll have to go search that one down. That's fantastic. You also you go see a lot of movies and things like that. What's some of your favorite movies lately that you've gone to see?
I see everything. The most recent one that I loved was Oppenheimer, of course.
Okay.
That one was amazing. I saw it. I took my father to go see it as well because he's a big World War II buff, and it had a lot of sort of behind the scenes, Manhattan Project kind of stuff that
Nice. Okay.
we don't really normally get to see. So yeah, it was really good and really well done. Um, um, Funny enough, one that I just bought recently was Gran Turismo. And you
Okay.
wouldn't think that would be a great movie, but it's actually not too bad.
Is that right?
It's
I have not seen that one.
it's kind of like a Rocky movie, or this, kid, he's like a video game player, and they give him an opportunity to drive a real race car and
Yeah,
against real, and you're like, oh well, this seems far-fetched. It's based on a true
based
story.
on a true story. Yeah, I've heard that. I saw the previews and heard the story of it. I just never got to watch it.
Yeah, no, and it was really good. It was I thoroughly enjoyed it because the guy who directed it is the same guy who did District 9. So it's Neil Blomkamp. So it was a very well done film. So, but of course, I'm a big Star Wars fan and Star Trek fan, and I'm total geek because I work in computers.
Okay.
It was kind of a unique for me growing up because I was a computer geek. I was also into square dancing, and I was also into martial arts. So I did like 12 years of kung fu fighting. So
Oh, no, very nice.
so that was fun. Yeah. It Many activities that didn't really mix in with each other.
Yeah. Favorite of all the Star Wars? What do you think?
Favorite, Empire Strikes Back, of course.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Empire is probably, yeah, it's the best directed. So
Very nice. Okay. Yeah, I
yeah.
can. I was 10, I guess. That was 77 when New Hope, first one came. Well, fourth one, whatever you want to call it. First one came out, and
Mhm.
there's a handful of movies out there um, that for no reason whatsoever other than the movie, I can remember sitting in the theater. With my grandfather took me to that one. My brother and I took. My grandfather took us to that. I remember seeing the original Superman with Christopher Reeves.
Yep.
When that came out, I remember sitting in there with my uncle and one of my cousins. And there's just a handful of them for no other reason than that. I can remember sitting in there. I've seen hundreds, if not thousands, of movies in the theater, but there's
Hmm.
only a handful that you can remember. And something about the original Star Wars, it's like this is something I've never seen before. So that's probably my favorite. And then Empire Strikes Back behind it, just because I saw the first one when it came out. So good times.
Oh yeah.
And I have to, because probably my favorite movie, and people give me a hard time around here, is Tombstone. You have a favorite Western?
Oh, Tombstone is amazing. Actually, the T-shirt I was wearing that night that I went to karaoke,
Uh-huh.
it had Val Kilmer on it, and it says, "I'm your Huckleberry."
Nice.
It's one of my favorite shirts. I've actually got two of them, and I wear them. I got them from. There's a website called The Chivery, and you
Yep.
you can actually get that T-shirt,
Okay.
and it's great. So yeah, no, I love that movie, and Val Kilmer's performance was amazing as Doc Holliday.
I'll catch myself. I'll be doing whatever on YouTube, and then all of a sudden I realize I've watched 30 minutes of clips from Tombstone again. All ones I've seen before, hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of times.
Oh yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, and for me, if it's on TV, that's it. That's what I'm watching for the night.
Sure, absolutely.
It's-
That Shawshank Redemption, can't turn that off.
Correct.
I'll
Yep.
always go that way in Tombstone.
Hmm. Well, the other one that I continuously watch, and it's kind of a guilty pleasure, is Battleship.
Is that right? I have not watched it.
It's such a silly movie. It's
Mhm.
it's aliens and
Yeah.
battleships and what have you around Hawaii. I've been to Hawaii like 20 times in my life. It was my parents' favorite vacation spot. So I've been there a lot. So I recognized almost everything in the movie. And actually, I took my kids there, and we were on the USS Missouri, which they used in the movie. So it was nice.
Well, that's man, that's a story in and of itself, Hawaii, and going as many times as you have. I've been once. We went 4 years ago now, and it's an amazing place. You can't even. It's hard to believe you're still on Earth when you're standing out there looking at the volcanoes and everything. You're like, where? What kind of place is this? Just beautiful. It's one of there's a handful of places I've told my wife when we went on vacation or whatever. I said we don't have to go back to work. We can just. I'll figure. I'll be a bartender here. We'll stay here. And of course, she's the level-headed. She's like, no, we're going back home. You're going back to work. Um, that and Key West. Key West is another place we visited there, and I said, I'll get a job in one of these bars. We'll stay right here. Of course, she wouldn't let me. I don't know how serious I was about that. Oh, I'm a beach guy. And that being said, you're from Canada. I ask everybody if you could choose beach, mountains, plains, desert, where would you rather live?
I'm kind of a beach mountain guy, except I'm
Okay.
not really into water and I'm not really into skiing. I just like looking at them.
Yeah, okay. I agree. Um, I love being in the salt water, so I'm a beach guy.
Yeah, well, the salt water here is really cold, so it's
Oh,
not worth
I'm
it.
sure, especially up there. Can't imagine.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's nice in Hawaii, but it's
sure.
horrible here in Vancouver.
Yeah, it's amazing how growing up on the East Coast where I'm at, the water you can see about a half a foot on a good day. There's no visibility unless you get out into the Keys or somewhere. But we went to Hawaii. You jump off the boat in the ocean when you're doing the snorkeling, and you can see. It seems like as far underwater as you can above water. It's unbelievable the clarity
Yep.
of some of that stuff and what you can see. At
Hmm.
some point, I hope to get back. We'll go back to Hawaii at some point. Who knows? Maybe after I'm retired. Who knows? I don't know. It's a tough trip from here. I mean, it's 4.5, 5 hours to California, and then it's another 5 to 6 hours from California to Hawaii. So it's a
Uh,
full day if you're coming out of Atlanta. So
well,
unfortunately,
since my son's now 21 and my daughter is 17, um, I've decided that I can get back into calling again, and
okay.
so
What's
officially,
your
I guess.
plans with that? What are you going to do?
So, so official announcement is right here on your channel, I
Oh,
guess.
come on, let's go. Tell
There
me
you
about
go.
it.
So I've already paid my membership to Collar Lab. I'm going to be at the Collar Lab convention this year,
Very nice.
and so I'm planning on hooking up with a bunch of old contacts and seeing about booking some dates and getting out there.
That is awesome, man. That's going to be in Grapevine, Texas. So
Yes.
I'll get to meet you there. I'm definitely going to Caller Lab. That's where my convention started, outside of the Georgia State Convention, because I lived here. I hit a Caller Lab, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. Now was my first one, and kind of what we were talking about earlier with the calling and the level of calling. When you go out there, the dances at night are what I go for. I mean, I love the stuff during the day, the classes you can choose from, caller school type things, but the sessions. But at night, the callers, when they start to get up their caller, and the dancing is such a good high level because it's all callers and their partners. That I have so much fun in at night sitting around talking, So, man, it's going to be awesome to meet you at Caller Lab. It's
I
fantastic.
usually find myself in one of the hexagon squares.
Okay. Okay. I've
It's
never done it. I've
Mark
watched it a
Baker and
couple
them.
times. Wow. What else do you have? So, Caller Lab, any other plans, travel wise, for conventions or anything?
No, not really. So it turns out that this year, actually it was last year, Scott Byers from California, he passed away.
Right.
And so his wife had waited a while before throwing a special dance for him.
Mhm.
And because she wanted to make sure that everybody could get there because he had passed away just sort of at the end of COVID. And not many people were traveling and a bunch of other issues that were there. So she decided to throw a special a memorial dance for Scott, and I was put on the program because I'm really good friends with them,
That's
and so it was fun because we did a full dance with the Ghost Riders band,
mhm.
and so we did like 1 hour of advanced prior to the plus dance, and then we did a full plus dance, and yeah, it was so much fun, and for me, it was the first time I had called in quite some time. And I told everybody it was just like, just like putting on a comfy pair of shoes. Like it just felt so good. And then the day after, I got a phone call from Kip Garvey. He had woken up and fell out of bed and screwed up his back. And and he had asked if I could fill in for him at his advanced club that particular day. And then if I would do his plus club the next day. And I
Wow.
said, sure. So I had two dances while I was in California, and again, it just like a comfy old shoe, and I got to do some workshop calls and other fun things, and it was great. So so yeah.
That's
So
awesome that you can
so
just
I
drop
kind
right
of
back
decided,
into
and
it.
of course my kids were at home looking after themselves. So I'm like, you know what, this is perfect. I can do this.
Sure. Man, that is phenomenal. Just the fact that you can go back in there and start calling like that is just says a lot about you, because it was tough. I mean, now granted, I didn't have the years because you've been doing it for a long time, and from a young age. I'd been calling for about 8, 9 years, and then with probably over COVID, 14 to 16 months, I didn't step on a stage or pick up a microphone because there just was none. There was no dancing anywhere down here. And when I finally got back and started booking dances, those first couple of dances, I mean, I'd played with it at home, but you can't do it from your sofa with nobody in front of you. You can practice singing calls all night long, but the timing, and for the life of me, I could not remember the term crossfire or coordinate. I'd be calling a dance and I'd get there. I'm like, well, do that thing where you trade and then you circulate that one. And they were like, oh, AC Doocy. I was like, oh, I can't even remember that one either. So it was tough. So that you can jump right back in, man, that is phenomenal. And Caller Lab will be a big step up for you because, again, you get to see a lot of people you haven't seen in a while and get back out on the circuit.
Right.
So are you looking? I mean, I don't know how far ahead you've thought. Have you thought about trying to build a club where you are, anything like that?
No, one of the things that I've decided over the years was that I'm not really interested in the local scene.
Okay.
There's as I say, there's been a lot of horrible jealousies and fighting between other callers.
Okay.
Occasionally, I might fill in, maybe,
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, I've never built a program at home. There was a while when there was a caller here in Vancouver who was dying of cancer, and he asked me to fill in at his club while he was in the hospital. And I ended up taking over his club because he passed away. And but due to politics with the club, it got to a point where we had finished the advanced lessons, and we had about 8 squares of dancers on the floor, and they were great. But the club leadership pulled me aside and asked me if I would, call a little bit harder because they had some dancers on the floor that they would like to, stay at home. And if I called a little bit harder, those people might stay at home. And I said, well, I'm the hired help, so I'll do what you asked me to do. And I did. The problem is it backfired on them. The ones that they thought were weaker dancers that they wanted to go home, they actually got better.
Yeah.
And the ones that were reasonably good dancers, they thought I was calling too hard, and they complained and they left. So
Yeah. It
we
can't
ended up
get you.
having the opposite problem, and then the club decided to blame me for it. And I said, you know what? If that's what you're going to do, then you don't need me. So I quit calling for them, because the club was about 40-minute drive away from me. So I'm like, it's a long distance. I don't need to drive here.
Yeah.
And then that was it. I was the only caller that was able to call for that club at the time. And so the club basically shut down after I left. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but yeah, my biggest pet peeve in square dancing is politics. And
Sure.
the nice thing about being a traveling caller is you go to a location, you call a weekend, they love you, and then you leave, and whatever politics there are, they stay behind,
Yeah.
and they handle their own little politics, and you don't have to worry about it. So that's kind of the nice part. And the last weekend that I did, I was calling in Bratislava, Slovakia. Uh, it was a mainstream through C1 dance weekend, and the caller who did it the year before me was Jerry Story.
Wow. Nice. Okay.
So yeah, so it was a fun dance weekend. But I just happened to be in Germany a weekend that Walt Burr was doing a caller school in Munich, and Tony was supposed to go over and help him with the caller school, but a week beforehand, that was when there was a bombing in Brussels.
Yeah.
And I was in Paris at the time with my kids when the bombing happened. And so because there was a bombing in Brussels, Tony canceled his flight to Europe because, it's kind of dangerous to fly to Europe at that point. And uh, and so I let Walt know that I was already in Europe, and he said, "Oh," he goes, "can you come by the school?" I said, "Sure." So I dropped by the school, and there was somebody at the school who was the one that was running the weekend, and he said, well, we've got Jerry's story this year. Can you come do the next year? I'm like, sure. So
When was that? How long ago was
all
that?
worked out. 2018.
20, yeah, okay. Very nice.
Yeah, it was like May of 2018, or no, March of 2018, I think. No, it was May of 2018, because I missed the teen festival that year because I was over there.
And it's awesome to know that you're getting back out there now that your kids are growing up, getting to where they can take care of themselves, so that you can get back out there because obviously you've done it for a long time. You're very good at it. And it's something that is tough. I can't imagine now if, you know, somebody just said you can't call anymore for myself, because I love it. If it's at a club, that because I have a club now, I call first and third Thursdays, and but then I do travel around a little bit in Georgia and what have you, and it's just I enjoy it so much. The thought of not doing it when we go on vacation somewhere for a week and it's somewhere that I can't sing, or have no outlet to sing. I'm just like, man, I just want to go sing somewhere. And then the calling part of it, I've really in the last few years, the patter, I just love the choreography of it and working on it. And so I don't forget because I've got a few people that will call me and ask about it. Do you have a favorite get out from any
Uh,
level?
I've watched a lot of your programs, and I've seen a lot of people give stuff. So number one, I'm a bit of a unicorn in the fact that I believe that I don't do any module calling at
Okay.
all.
Okay.
So I don't pre-write get outs for anything. Everything I do is spontaneous.
Yes.
So um, the only time I write stuff is if I'm writing stuff for the teen square dance competition. And mostly, as I said, I guess before, if I write something, typically it's too difficult for anybody to dance. So there's really no need for me to write anything.
Right.
Because usually what comes off the top of my head is difficult enough. But the one thing that I was really proud of, and it was in one of the mysteries that I did for the super senior mystery for the teen festival, which is a paid event. So the people who are too old to compete, they can pay $100 per square and dance a thing called the Super Senior, and it's just so much fun. And it's a fundraiser for the teen festival because they need to make extra money to pay for their stuff.
Right.
So what this is it's an opportunity for older dancers to try to dance the same kind of stuff that the kids dance, but at the same time, it's specifically meant for them. And so one of the get outs that I did, it was a spin chain through to home. And so you kind of have to wrap your head around that one. It's in a what's called a generalized phantom setup. So if you have like parallel ocean waves and you have one set of the dancers hinge, so that you have, you know, uh, like two mini waves this way and then two mini waves this way.
Okay.
And what'll happen is all the boys are in the middle looking out, and all the girls are on the ends looking in. And then you say, you're going to do a spin chain through. The girls are going to do their first cast with imaginary people. It's a first, they're going to do their first 3/4 cast with imaginary people, and their secondary cast they're going to do with the boys. And then you explain how that's going to work. So you say, okay, do your spin chain through, and as they're doing their half and then 3/4, and then the girls are starring half in the middle, I tell the boys to do half a circulate. So they're on the ends of their little wave. They do a half circulate and they meet up with a girl, and then they do a push cast 3/4 and they end up at home. And that was one of the things that I came up with that I just thought was amazing and so much fun. And the dancers actually completed it at the teen festival, and I thought that was amazing. Like
That's
if you watch the video, you can actually see them do it. So it's not that difficult. It was just something that I thought was kind of cute.
very
And I think you were talking with Steve Kopman. You say, yeah, nobody uses spin chain through anymore. Well, I do. And
Yeah, we
one
had
of
talked
the
about that.
well, the caller that I trained with, Dave Stevens, he liked to minimize the definitions down to their core pieces. And so for spin chain through, like we all know that it's, you know, everyone turn half, the centers turn 3/4, the very centers turn half, and then centers turn 3/4. So he wanted to simplify the definition so that it was accessible for everyone to learn how to dance in an easy way. And so he says that spin chain through is very simply this. And he says it's a series of arm turns, starting with everyone, where you go in the following order: half, 3/4, half, 3/4, and you alternate hands, and that's it. So you don't start with a right, you don't start with a left, you just everyone turn half, the next pair turn 3/4, the next ones who can turn half, the next ones turn 3/4. And so all you remember is that order. You go half, 3/4, half, 3/4. So then what he did was he put you in ocean waves, and he says centers begin, spin chain through. So you're doing the same progression of moves. You go half, 3/4. So the centers turn half, and then everyone turns 3/4, and then everyone turns half, and everyone turns 3/4. And he had an opening biggie that he would use. He would say heads lead right, touch a quarter, centers begin a spin chain through. And when you were finished, it's a right and left grand. And when you finish the right and left grand, you're at home.
Wow.
So that was one of the things that he did years ago. And it was in one of his mysteries. And so as a teen dancer, that's something that we learned how to dance. And so when we think of spin chain through, we think of it as a series of arm turns.
Right.
It's just half, 3/4, half, 3/4. So you can also do it in reverse order. You can go 3/4, half, 3/4, half. So yeah, we do a lot of things. I think one of the other things he did was he said centers begin as spin chain through, but after every 3/4 turn, do a split circulate.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, so he did a whole bunch of things, and it just made the call just that much more difficult. But it's interesting when all you're thinking of is just a bunch of series of arm turns.
Right.
So yeah, it's fun. And so that's kind of what we think about when we're thinking about choreography. So
That's awesome.
just an example.
That gives me something else to think about. I appreciate that. It's fantastic. Fantastic. And also favorite call, if you have one, any level.
Favorite call. The one that I liked, I actually did a workshop on at Collar Lab, and it was from the A2, or yeah, from A2. It's called split transfer.
Split transfer? Okay.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I learned from Dave years ago was that if you're going to teach a call, the best thing to do is to walk the dancers through the call without actually defining it to them. And so for advanced dancers, you can put dancers in a box of four, like say a right-handed box of four.
Mhm.
And I would say, okay, everybody do half a scoot back and now do a crossfire. And then I do that a few times just so that they were used to doing it. And I do it from a bunch of different positions.
Mhm.
And then I would then put them in that position again. And I'd say, okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to do the half scoot back into a crossfire without stopping. And then they would do that. And then I would stop and say, okay, now we're going to explain how this call is done. The call says, if you're a trailer, you're going to extend, you're going to cast 3/4 and then extend. And if you're a leader, you're going to do a split circulate 2 times and quarter in. It's going to feel a lot like the half scoot back and crossfire. Go. And having the dancers dance it beforehand
Mhm.
gives them the opportunity to see what the traffic pattern is. And it gives them the opportunity to know how to do that call and how it feels without actually explaining the definition to them. But then when you explain the definition to them, then you can expand it and you can say, okay, from lines of 4 phasing out, if you do a split transfer, it's everyone's a leader. So you do 2 split circulates and a quarter in. And they go, oh. So, they learn all of the parts while they're doing it. But at the very beginning, when you're teaching it, you give them the feeling of the call so that they know what it's going to feel like before they dance it. So when I figured that one out, that was the one that I thought was the coolest because it came up with something that was just so unique, because the half scoot back into a crossfire isn't something you would normally see.
Right.
However, the nice part is when I figured that out, I figured now I can do that at plus. I can say do half a scoot back into a crossfire, and it's just a split transfer, which is something I already know what it does, and it just I can walk the dancers through it. So it makes my plus calling a little more interesting because I've taken something that I know at advanced and I've used plus calls to explain how to do it. So,
I'm start
so
messing
that's
with that
probably
with
my
checkers
favorite call.
tonight. Very nice. Very nice.
Yes, I'm definitely an advocate for checkers. I like terminations, but I find that if you don't actually feel what the dancers are
Yeah.
doing with your fingers, and you don't actually study, like that was the one thing that Dave taught me when I was doing the stuff with the creamers at the restaurant.
Mhm.
He would always say, you know how to do this call. He goes, how do you do half of it? Whether you could do half of it or not. And I'm like, oh, okay. And that was always the challenge. And then one thing came up years later. I was talking to Clark Baker, and he came up with this thing where you do. There's a call called swing the fractions, and swing the fractions is very similar to the concept I mentioned with spin chain through. Swing the fractions, you go. It's a palindrome, and so you do a series of arm turns, and it doesn't start with a right or a left. It just starts. It's everyone starts, and you go quarter, half, three quarter, half, and a quarter. So it's a quarter turn, half turn, three quarter turn, half turn, quarter turn. So he would say, do a swing the fractions, but at the midway point, interrupt with a 6-2 AC deucey. So the way you would do that is you go quarter, half, and the middle part is three quarters. Well, what's half of three quarters? Well, everyone would cast off 3/8, which is crazy. You end up cattywampus. So you're now in 45-degree angles, and you have like a wave across the center, and you've got mini waves on the outside. And there's a column that goes around the outside, and the very two centers can do their trade. So you do your 6-2 AC deucey, and then you finish by everyone casting 3/8 and then going half and then a quarter. It's neat, but it's something you have to workshop because they're not going to get it the first time you call it.
No. Oh. Oh my gosh, that's awesome, man.
Yes.
Well, man, certainly happy to hear that you're getting back out there and you're getting the calling going again. I look forward to dancing to you at some point. I don't know when I'm going to get up to Canada. Of course, I'll probably get to hear you at some point at Caller Lab, hopefully, and we'll run up on each other at a convention down the road.
More than likely, I'll start attending the conventions again. I was going to go this year, but I just can't get I usually work with my air miles flights to get me to nationals, and I can't get one to Milwaukee this year.
We're actually driving up, I guess. Not looking forward to it, but we're going to drive it. Flying to Grapevine, but we're going to drive to Milwaukee. So,
oh yeah, well, you should go to USA West next year. It's
USA West. I see it all the time on Facebook and all that. I need to look into that.
I believe in 2025 it's in Spokane.
Okay.
So for me, that's an 8-hour drive. But I might fly there because I don't like the 8-hour drive because it's stupid. There isn't a direct route to get there, so I have to drive all the way to Seattle and then drive over to Spokane. Take the I-90 over to Spokane. So it's a long drive for me. Actually, this weekend I'm driving to Seattle because there's the funeral for Don Wood that's happening, and so I'll be seeing a bunch of old friends there as well. I think Charlie Robinson's going to be there.
Nice. I finally got to meet him not long ago. That's an awesome dude. Also.
Oh yeah, Charlie's great.
I call him. He's C2. He's C1. I'm C2 when we're around each other, since we both go by Charlie. So, man, it has been a pleasure to finally get to meet you. We've gone back and forth on Facebook quite a bit. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, and makes me happy to know that you're getting back out there because it's something you obviously enjoy. I saw all the karaoke stuff, and if it's in you, it's in you, man. Same with police work with me. For years I couldn't imagine doing anything else, but I'm officially getting done with that at some point.
Well, the thing that most people are shocked at is that I'm an advanced and challenge caller and I'm capable of singing. Because there's a lot of advanced and challenge callers are, really just choreographers and they're not really into the singing part of it.
Yeah.
But I love the singing. I love singing calls.
Can't remember the name. Last year at GSI school before the nationals, there was a gentleman in the class with me, and he'd been calling for years, but he's only called C. He said he's never called plus mainstream. He started out calling C, and that's all he calls. And he had C clubs wherever he's from. Can't remember the name, but I was like, what? You don't call lower than that? But that's all he's ever done. I can't remember his name or anything, but it just struck me as odd that you have called C all your life.
It's an entirely different skill set. I remember I was having a car ride with Bronk Wise, and we were talking about the difference between how to entertain dancers, because it is different. It's definitely a different scenario. When you're entertaining mainstream and plus dancers, it's mostly about wind in the face. It's mostly about singing well and entertaining those dancers as best you can. But you can't you can't do that kind of stuff at C1.
Sure.
C1 or advanced, because a lot of times the advanced clubs, they don't do singing calls.
Yeah.
They might just be doing patter all night long, or they might do one singer at the end of the dance. There was one club that my parents danced at, which was an advanced club, but they would dance singing calls all night long, and that was nice. But they were really a plus club that just wanted to dance something different, so they chose to dance advanced. But a lot of the advanced clubs that I go to, they only just dance patter all night long, and they're not happy if you pull out a singing call. But I kind of insist on it because I love it.
Well, you're saying,
although I tend not to do singing calls at Challenge, because they definitely don't care for them, because usually the singing calls aren't challenging enough for them to really enjoy the choreography.
Bryan, it's been my pleasure, brother. It's great getting to know you, and if we don't before, I will definitely see. Well, it's just a couple months out now. See you at Caller Lab.
Yes, I will be there.
And we can sit down. We can sit down and like some of the other people I talk, we can sit down and have a Diet Coke, and talk about choreography. That's awesome.
Yeah, you'll see me there sitting around with Don Beck and chatting.
Very nice, very nice. Don Beck's a great guy. All right, man. Well, I'll tell you what. I promised everybody the first round I'll buy you the first Diet Coke, and we'll spend some time together.
All right.
Thanks for having me. It's awesome talking to you, buddy. Like I say, this will be out, well, of course, when everybody sees it, but next Friday it'll be coming out. So really excited to get it out there and let everybody know that you're back into calling again.
Yeah, no, it's going to be fun.
Although
it'll scare a few people, but
no, well, that's the way callers can be sometimes.
Yep.
Bryan, it's my pleasure, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a lot.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Walking square through, all the way, and then you'll swing through again. Boy running a Ferris wheel, and now the center square through to 3. Swinging promenade, out in old Troubadour. When I'm gone, side space, grand square, still feel 25. Most of the time, I still raise a little Cain when the boys left Alabama and we talk some pretty women. Lord, I'm still right there with them, singing above the crowd and the noise. Four ladies chain over and back, I'll be an old Troubadour when I'm gone. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Oxendine.
Charlie Petrie, y'all.
Thank y'all for letting me do that. I appreciate that.